Good afternoon, good morning, everyone, depending on where you're located. My name is Michelle Hall, and I'm the marketing specialist here at V Technologies. Today, I'm accompanied by Simon Volta, our Senior Regional Account Director for V Technologies and Starship, and Jason Sheaffer, the CEO at Crestwood Associates, a company which is one of our trusted partners. With that being said, we're going to go ahead and get started. I would like to turn over to Jason, who will be kicking off the presentation for you today.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Michelle, and appreciate the opportunity to present on Modernizing GP. Well, as Michelle said, my name is Jason Sheaffer. I'm the CEO of Crestwood Associates. We're a 26-year Dynamics VAR. We started in the GP space, picked up Dynamics SL, and then have moved into some of the more cloud-based ERP products. So I'm excited for the conversation today and the presentation. We're going to give you a little bit of insight as to our journey as a VAR and how we've moved from a Dynamics shop into the cloud ERP space. And as Michelle said, we really want this session to be as interactive as possible. So type those questions in, fill out those poll questions, and we can get to know you a little bit more along the way. We'll go into the background of Crestwood, a little bit more about who we are and what makes up our DNA. Then we'll move into the kind of end-of-life GP timeline and what Microsoft has stated, which hasn't been firm in the past, but is definitely firm now. So we can unpack that a little bit. And then we'll talk about why now? I almost made this slide like who, what, when, where, why, and how, right? And essentially, we're going to talk about, the opportunity that is in front of you from a change perspective. And then we'll move into a couple of options that we endorse as a VAR, that is Crestwood. And then we'll talk about how we help our clients move, from a Crestwood perspective as well. So with that being said, I'm going to jump into a little bit more about who Crestwood is as a partner, and we'll get the presentation started. Now, at our core, we exist because of our clients. And our job and our mission is to radically transform business operations through technology, through accounting software, through ERP, through business applications. This is what we live and breathe, and we want to be the best in the mid-market. And we do that by working smart, having fun, and delivering results. This is how we hire our employees. When we're looking at a potential partner or an ISV, such as V Technology Starship, we say, are they doing exceptional work in a certain industry or a certain space? And if so, then we work with those partners and bring them to our client base so they can kind of optimize and integrate solutions to optimize their environment. So when you think about our core values in working smart, having fun, and delivering results, I wanted to unpack that a little bit. So in ERP and in technology, it's really important to have integrity. There's a lot of complexity in business processes, and our job is to really be transparent, collaborate with you, and make sure we're bringing forward the most relevant and important and honest information. So we are inspired by self-responsibility. I jokingly say we're like a bunch of small business owners at Crestwood, and when we jump in with our clients, and we're very curious about what they're doing and how they're trying to do it, and we bring along our technology for that. So we have fun doing it. And I jokingly say to people, it's like the last thing I want to say at a holiday party, for example, is I'm in ERP technology, because you say that and people give you that blank stare and they want to get away from the conversation as quickly as possible. But this is who we are. We're really passionate about the technology and the software that we have. We're constantly learning. GP hasn't really been that vibrant, I'll say, in more recent years in terms of the releases that Microsoft has put out. But many of the products like Acumatica or Dynamics 365 Business Central, they're coming out with 2 major releases a year. In those releases, there's hundreds of new features and capabilities that we need to understand as your potential partner, so we can bring that to you and help you make informed decisions. So we collaborate, we have fun with the technology, and we stay at the tip of the spear. And then at the end of the day, we're about delivering results. what good is it if we have great technology that is interactive if you're not able to pick it up, use it, and drive your business forward? In today's business economy, there's a lot of things happening, whether it's tariffs, from geopolitical relationships, whether it's private equity, that happens a lot nowadays, or organizations are buying companies, and they need flexible software solutions that can come in and help them with their business goals and objectives. So we work with our clients, we collaborate, and then we deliver, and that's this idea of surpassing limitations with precision. So that's a little bit about Crestwood and our DNA. Now, how do we do that? It, of course, is our people, and you see a lot of the headshots here on the slide, and this is just a subset of us. But with our people, we leverage what we call our technology stack. So I'm going to run through this, quickly at a high level to give you a little bit more of a background in terms of what we offer, and then we'll move into kind of our experience with GP and why this conversation is hopefully relevant to you. Now, you'll see over here in the upper left-hand corner, we've got a logo for Business Central. So Microsoft, in their Dynamics portfolio, they have a number of products. You'll see to the right, Dynamics GP, Dynamics SL, but they come out with a new product, which is an adaptation off of Dynamics Nav called Business Central. Business Central is a cloud version of Nav that is kind of brand new. It leverages a lot of the functionality that a typical Nav user would have used, but it is much more modern, and it aligns really well with the Microsoft 365 stack, or the Office stack, which is the logo you see to the right. So if a business is using Microsoft for Outlook, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Power BI, the Teams, the list goes on, Business Central is very, very tightly coupled with the M365 stack. So you can use the Microsoft kind of modern workplace to be in kind of one place versus having GP on the side and then having to go into Excel and manually dump information. It's much more automated from that perspective. A few years ago, Microsoft, kind of moving on here, a few years ago, Microsoft partnered with OpenAI, the company that developed ChatGPT, and they created what they called Microsoft Copilot. Now, Copilot isn't just one, say, AI solution. It's actually over 100 different apps. And Copilot works with M365, it works with the Power Platform, it works with Business Central, and it actually gives you the ability to analyze data. It comes back with actionable insights. It's meant to kind of ride alongside of you. That's why they call it the Copilot. If you're the pilot, flying a business or a plane, Copilot is right there beside you, helping you detect anomalies, understand, something that you might not pick up in kind of a data set. It will give you those insights. Also, Copilot allows you to build your own Copilot agents, and that's something that Crestwood does, for our clients. Now, moving down, you'll see Acumatica. This one might be new to you if you're not kind of familiar with mid-market cloud ERP. But Acumatica, and we're going to get into this in more detail, is a kind of a unlimited user type solution that works really well in the cloud for various industry editions. We picked up the product about 13 years ago, and it's become one of our flagship products as we're automating our clients' operations and helping them kind of grow and change and evolve, through technology. Next to Acumatica, we have something called the Power Platform, and this is also part of the Microsoft tech stack. The Power Platform is comprised of Power Pages, Power Automate, Power Apps, Power BI. These are the tools that what Microsoft calls is the art of the possible. So if you have a complex business process that maybe needs a little bit more than your ERP can provide, Power Automate will ride sidecar and help you automate a process across applications, or something in the Power Platform. And then finally, Microsoft Azure. This is Microsoft's hosting service, similar to Amazon's AWS. Crestwood uses Microsoft Azure. We call it the Crestwood Cloud, and we actually host many of our Dynamics GP clients, our SL clients, even our Acumatica clients, because if you need a private environment, you want a little bit more control over your data and your database, Microsoft Azure is a very strong solution to do that. So you're protected, you get your backups, your geo redundancy, and all the things that Microsoft provides with their SLA. Now to the right, you're going to see kind of a line, and these are what I call our legacy products. So we do still support our Dynamics GP clients and our SL clients, but because those products are at their end of life to some degree, we're not typically selling it new. And actually, Microsoft has kind of wound down the idea that you can even sell Dynamics GP at this point. But I did want to call it out here on the slide, as we do have great expertise with Dynamics GP and SL, but it is not something that we're actively selling or promoting for a potential new client or customer. So hopefully that all makes sense in terms of the technology or the stack that Crestwood offers and provides to our clients. This is sort of the secret sauce that comes together with our people so we can help you automate your business operations. Now, I thought, since the title of the presentation today is Modernizing GP, I'd give you a little bit more insight into who we are as a GP VAR. You know, one thing that I have seen just in recent years, because Microsoft is pushing GP clients to move to something else, I have found that some GP VARs have sort of abandoned their client base, or they're not really providing the same exceptional service that they were providing in the past. And this is not the case for Crestwood. You know, so we have been in business for 26 years. All 26 years, we've been servicing our GP clients. We have in-house consulting. We have an in-house support team and portal. So as clients have maybe a hung batch or an issue, and they need help, we're there for them. We also provide development and integration services. I know most people aren't trying to build new integrations or customizations to GP today, but if that's the case and you're not getting support or help from your current partner, that is something that we offer. And of course, we're upgrading our GP clients, you know, to make sure they're staying current in what they call the modern life cycle. We do have over 300 GP clients. Now, one thing that makes Crestwood unique is that we offer what we call a customer success manager to every client, a CSM. This is a non-billable resource that we provide to any of our GP clients, who will help you understand, what is Microsoft doing? What are they coming out with? Are there any new ISVs you should be working with? Do you need to get your current GP environment into a safer environment on a hosted environment such as the Crestwood Cloud? So we come alongside our clients, whether they're on Business Central or Acumatica or GP, to ensure that they're getting the most out of their investment. And then, of course, you know, we're working with the key ISVs such as Starship, right? A great product for shipping, you know, and as clients are needing more from GP, they're typically turning to ISVs because the product is pretty stagnant at this point. And so we do bring in key ISVs, you know, for various functions. So that's a little bit more on our GP experience. And certainly, if you have additional questions, my name and email and phone number will be shared here at the end of the presentation. But happy to help if you're experiencing any frustration, as Crestwood is there for you from that perspective. So we're going to transition now to what I'm calling the elephant in the webinar, right? And this idea that Dynamics GP is reaching its end of life. You know, there was a couple of false starts from a Microsoft perspective. You know, I don't know if you've ever attended, you know, the Community Summit or DynamicCon, some of these different seminars that are hosting different users in VARs, but Microsoft has made it official that Dynamics GP is going away at the end of 2029. If you're doing your math, I have it here on the side. That's 1,665 days until December 31st of 2029. So there is some time, you know, and that's the good news. Now, I've done presentations similar to this over the years, and that red arrow is getting closer and closer to the end of the timeline. But it is important, as you're thinking about what does the end of GP mean, that you're building a business continuity plan. I believe that as we get closer and closer to 2029, we're going to see more and more businesses migrating, which will create a little bit of chaos, because if you think about it, if you migrate to a new system, you need potentially a partner and somebody to help you with that transition. You've got to migrate your data, migrate some of your ISVs and any customizations you have. And so I think it's important to start to consider a move and what that would entail. And that's, again, part of why we're talking today. A couple of things too, just to consider even today, right? Are you doing an annual upgrade to stay current on Dynamics GP? That does protect you when you move into what they call the modern lifecycle policy, which is this kind of darker green that you see below. This does give you access to updates, fixes, keeps your tax tables current and regulatory updates. So I always encourage people, to, if you can, stay current on your annual enhancement plan, and then make sure you are doing an upgrade, because the further and further you get behind, the more difficult it is to switch in the end, because at least from a Microsoft perspective, they have some data migration tools, but those require you to be on a certain version of GP, for example. So that's kind of the elephant in the webinar. Now, why change, right? You might be thinking to yourself, well, I've been using GP for a really long time, and it's a workhorse, and I don't have any major issues with it. And that is all true, and that's consistent. If that's what you're thinking, that is consistent with what we've seen in our client base, customer base. Now, we've moved probably about, I would say, 30 to 40 accounts from GP to Business Central, and we've probably moved about 15 or so accounts to Acumatica. And so we're starting to see a little bit more of that. And I thought, well, let's talk about why now. And here's a little bit more of an in-depth analysis on that timeline for the end of life. So we've mentioned now that December 31st of 2029 is the end of product enhancements, regulatory updates, service packs, and what I'll call the standard technical support. So you've got that kind of timeline. Now, a couple more years out, you'll see here that you will have the full end of security updates. So that's sort of what I'll call the extended support. That's the traditional model that Microsoft adds after a product has reached its end of life. And again, it's really not a place you want to be. After that December 31st of 2029, you won't want to be on Dynamics GP at that point. And so I think it's important to start to build that plan. Now, for people who might want to buy GP in what they call the perpetual license, that day has come and gone. Actually, it was just this past April. So there are no new sales of Dynamics GP at this point. And then coming up next year, they're going to discontinue the subscription option that they have. Not many people bought that, but for those who did or who want to, for example, a new sale, that won't be available after the April date of 2026. So hopefully this is a little telling. I've got my little funny picture here on the right. We can't stop time, unfortunately, and Microsoft has made it clear. And so I thought, well, why change? Like, what is it about future-proofing that's important? What is it that GP is not really able to do today that would require me to make a move? And I wanted to call out a couple of high-level buckets that I think are consistent with the many clients that I've worked with or prospective clients as they're getting off of what I'll call a legacy product and trying to get onto a cloud product. Well, number one, GP is not native in the browser. It does not have a native app in like the Apple or the Android store. So, modern businesses, whether they have a dispersed workforce or they've reduced the IT spend that they have internally, they typically leverage the browser and the cloud to access the various business applications that they work with. So GP, of course, doesn't offer that, and so many businesses are having to keep a server, in the closet, or they're using a hosting service, and then they're having to use, RDP or terminal services to get onto that application, and that becomes very restrictive if you have people who are traveling or going to a new another site or a different warehouse. It's just not conducive to collaborating and working in the same place, from a technical architecture perspective. And then, of course, integrating with other applications. GP doesn't have a robust offering from an API or from an integrations perspective. So there's many kind of middleware or iPaaS tools that are out there to try to augment some of the shortcomings of GP. But nowadays, as more and more businesses are trying to talk with different applications and having their ERP be the source of truth, this limitation from a GP perspective can definitely hamstring you. And it's difficult to build integrations, and it's hard to maintain. And unfortunately, it can cause business challenges. And then I touched on this a little bit with the browser capability, but this idea of collaboration, you're going to find as we talk through Business Central and we talk through Acumatica that these tools were meant to be collaborative. You can get in, you can see transactions, you can make approvals. The system will communicate with you via text message or an email. You have your one place to go as an organization, whether it's sales or operations or accounting. You can be on the same page in a new cloud ERP because of the technology and the licensing that these products provide. And unfortunately, I know GP has tried to do it a little bit with workflow approval and some other kind of email engines that they connect, but it's just not the same. And I can kind of unpack that for you if you have questions. So on the other side of the coin, if you stay on GP, you're missing the opportunity that the modern cloud ERP presents. So now you're disparate, you're not connected, you're not able to leverage AI, which both Acumatica and Business Central have done greatly. And so now you're kind of stuck in the Stone Ages a little bit, and you're not getting the benefits that many other applications and businesses are using, because AI is now embedded in most of the mid-market cloud ERPs. So that's a little bit of why change now. We're going to move into a little bit more about some of the options that are out there, and we're going to talk a little bit too about the Crestwood and the Starship partnership. But before we do, I thought we might start with our first poll question. And it's a little bit of a loaded question, I get that, but I'm curious to get your perspective. So, what is your biggest motivation for considering a move from Dynamics GP to a cloud-based ERP solution? So I'm going to launch the poll, and then as the results are coming in here, we'll go ahead and close it out in about 30 seconds, and then we'll keep moving through the presentation. So fill it out. I maybe should have offered an option for, I'm not sure if we're moving, or I don't have a motivation, but give me a little bit of insight as to what you're thinking. We're at about 30% for folks wanting to reduce IT infrastructure and maintenance, and then 60 or was it 67% here ensure long-term support and future-proofing. So it gives me a little bit of insight. It's like, well, maybe you're worried about some dated infrastructure, and I recognize that GP does require having that kind of expertise in-house or a third party to maintain it, so that makes sense. And then, yeah, this idea of having a good long-term future. So thank you for the responses. I'm going to go ahead and close that question, and we'll move on to a little bit more about our history and partnership with Starship, so you understand that the great tool that you're using for shipping and automation with GP, it doesn't go away. Actually, you can continue to do that in the warehouse. There's this idea of, if you have on-prem, you can move into the cloud, which Simon's going to touch on here shortly. But so Crestwood has worked with Starship and in V Technologies for over a decade, and we work with Starship for GP, for Business Central, and for Acumatica. And right now, the world is changing with a lot of traditional distributors who might have shipped B2B. Well, now they're shipping B2C, and they're using e-commerce platforms to take orders and fulfill them through their warehouse, and then ultimately ship them to the end customer. And so this need for shipping automation and the great tool that Starship is, it doesn't go away. And you know, you're going to hear a little bit about Acumatica, and you're going to hear a little bit about Business Central today, but both require Starship to help you really automate that pick, pack, and ship process. So just wanted to touch on that and help you understand that, you know, as you're hopefully as a distributor and you're scaling and growing, you know, you don't have to do anything too disruptive in the warehouse, because your back is covered from a Starship perspective. Will help you from the cloud-based ERP perspective. Now, we're going to touch on the path forward here, and I'm just going to expand on these two applications that I've referenced in our technology stack. And we're not going to have a time today to deep dive either one of these, but I believe these are the two best mid-market ERP products that are in the industry today. I know NetSuite, Sage Intacct, some of the others that are maybe in the mix, but I think these are the best. And so I wanted to kind of unpack that for you. So we'll start with Acumatica. Now, Acumatica has been voted year over year the most usable ERP product in the mid-market. This isn't something that Acumatica awarded themselves. Actually, you'll see in the next slide that G2, which is the site that really queries the end users, has voted them the most usable ERP. And this is really important, especially if you've been on GP for a while. If you think of change management and learning something new, maybe you have a bunch of users who've just been on GP, maybe it's an AP clerk or an AR clerk, and they're just not comfortable with change. Well, if you have a system like Acumatica that's very usable, it makes that change a little easier. And you want the product that you potentially move to be something that people are excited about, and that is definitely Acumatica. In addition to the usability, they provide what I call industry editions, or what they call industry editions. So if you're a distributor, a manufacturer, maybe you're a construction company, but you are mixed mode. So you make it, you ship it, and then you install it. Acumatica has your back. They have a field service offering. So if you ship a product out and then you go out and you service it or maintain it, we've got a suite of modules for that. And then they have a professional services edition. So there's a lot of robust functionality. It's not that these are different products. You know, you see this with some ERP companies. They're buying a bunch of different products and they're kind of mashing them together. That's not the case. This is all pure Acumatica in terms of the XRP and the Acumatica platform. But they do have very specific industry functionality that they offer, so you can run the business and leverage the ERP to automate your transactions. The other thing that I thought was important is that Acumatica was born in the cloud. It wasn't one of these, like Microsoft tried to do this with GP. They said, oh, we're going to give you a kind of a light browser version. Didn't really work. And that was because they were sidled with the older technology in terms of how the product was written. And so it's just not ideal, whereas Acumatica, it's pure cloud. And then they do have a framework. The same framework that Acumatica used to develop the ERP, we get and you get potentially as a customer to develop, to integrate on your own site. And so that's really important. When you need to extend Acumatica, you have the tools to do that. The other thing that I thought was really interesting, especially when you consider a shift, is like, who is the publisher I'm working with? And what I think is unique about Acumatica is that they provide the customer bill of rights. I wanted to call out a couple of them. Number 2 here, I've highlighted in red. What's really cool about Acumatica is they don't charge you for users. They give you unlimited users. If you believe Acumatica is the right product for you, they're not going to nickel and dime you with a full user and a light user. They say, if this is the right product for you, we want everybody in the product and collaborating together. Also, this idea that you can actually deploy the solution in a public or private cloud. You know, so most of you on this call either have GP locally or you have it in a private cloud, and maybe there's a reason for that. And I wanted to call out that with Acumatica, you could go to the public cloud that Acumatica offers, which is hosted typically on Amazon AWS, or you can go with your own cloud or a private cloud. Crestwood, again, can help with that with our Crestwood cloud. But it does give you a little bit more flexibility should the business need drive you that direction. And then finally, we hear a lot of negative things about subscription-based licenses. There's a competitor in the mid-market who's notorious for locking you in to a discount, and they get you on their product, but then the discount goes away, and then they make it really hard for you to get your data back out. So it's very controlling, and it's unfortunate. And part of why Acumatica established this Bill of Rights is they said, we want to be better than that. We want it to be about our customers, and we want to show that we will give you a database copy in a usable format whenever you ask for it. So that's part of their DNA, and that's in their Bill of Rights. So I've had the pleasure of working with Acumatica for over 13 years, and they're a really good competitor as it relates to some of these other products, because they're very transparent and they go above and beyond to really protect their customers. And then they did just get bought recently. I thought I'd call that out by a group called Vista Equity Partners. And the good news here is that it was a massive transaction, and Vista has plans to continue to grow Acumatica. They've put them in their high growth fund, and we're seeing already some of the fruits of that with the development of the product and the continuation. So there's a really long kind of runway with Acumatica, where some of these other products, like you've seen a little bit with GPs, they're kind of on the shelf and there's not a lot going on. Acumatica has this really strong upside and a growth trajectory. And I just wanted to call out too that it is connected with Starship. You'll see that on the Acumatica marketplace, that there's a certified integration there. And then these are just a couple of awards. I won't read through these, but just know that the proof is in the pudding. And I always joke about these awards. You might not recognize some of these, but this is the industry analysts recognizing Acumatica, independent of Acumatica. And I think that's important to know, that this is a award-winning product, and it's really making a splash in the tech space. For the sake of time, I'm going to switch gears and move on to Dynamics 365 Business Central. So if you're a heavy Microsoft shop, you're using M365, you might have your own Azure hosting, and you might say, I want to stay in the Microsoft family. Business Central is a great product for that. BC does offer a wide range of capabilities out of the box. I've called out here over 70 modules. So whether it's your warehousing, your shipping, or your distribution, you would integrate a shipping carrier such as Starship. You'll see here that they're also in AppSource from a Microsoft perspective, so they've got a certified integration there. And it really does give you a lot of the things, Business Central that is, that GP doesn't offer. So it's got open APIs, so you can build integrations. It's born in the cloud as well, so you don't have to worry about installing anything on a user's workstation. They're really good at just connecting with the Microsoft suite and any key ISVs and let you grow and scale your business. It's a really strong product. They have moved a lot of customers from GP to Business Central. They provide data migration paths. They provide dual licensing, so a promotion to get you into Business Central. They're removing the barriers that would traditionally be in place when you're moving off of GP and onto something new and more modern. But it's very scalable. It's multi-company, intercompany. It has a lot of great capabilities there. And there's actually over 50,000 businesses using Business Central, even though it has not been out for very long. So pretty impressive from a Microsoft perspective that they were able to move so many companies onto Business Central. You'll see here too that Business Central is also recognized, and I called out this one because I thought it was one of the more interesting accolades that Business Central has received by Forbes. They rated them a 5 out of 5 in 2024, and it's because of its comprehensive features and native integrations. And so it's not just me saying it. It is very, what I'll say, affordable in terms of the licensing. It is not unlimited users, but it's very clean. If you're using the kind of essential user, it's $70 per user per month. They do have a Teams user as well. Some of the pricing will be changing here in the short term, but it's been very stable and a great product, for customers who just feel like, hey, we've either outgrown GP or we're ready to get on something more current. So it's pretty exciting. And again, this is what we do at Crestwood. Whether it's Acumatica or Business Central, we can give you detailed demos of either product. We can give you a demo of each product. We can compare what you're doing in GP and how that would translate to either Business Central or Acumatica. So we want to be kind of your partner from that perspective. And many of our consultants who were in the GP world have either moved to Business Central or Acumatica. So that's the good news. So a little bit more around our expertise as it relates to this transition and why we can help, or why you should choose us. As I've stated, we've been in business for 26 years. We offer Business Central and Acumatica migration services as it relates from moving to GP to one of these key products. And we have worked with both publishers to ensure that you get a promotion and a migration path. We have over 70 employees, and we do have nationwide coverage. So you might be on the East Coast or the West Coast. We have people in all time zones, and we only work with what I call the most seasoned or the most vetted people. We also look constantly at what is coming out. I recognize if you've been on GP for a long time, you may not be aware of what's out there. You'll hear of things like NetSuite or Odoo, Intact, and we vetted a lot of these products, and we feel that Business Central and Acumatica are really strong products for the reasons I've discussed, but also because of the relationship that they have to their customers. And then Crestwood does offer, like I said, our cloud services. We're a modern work solutions provider, which means we're credentialed and certified in Microsoft CSP to provide M365 services, business application services. And we really just have that proven track record with Microsoft and with Acumatica. We sit in the President's Club with Acumatica. We are on the board advisory group. We have certified consultants and MVPs and are recognized in the space. So it's a little bit more about our expertise, but really we want to get to know you and understand where you are at in your journey with GP and provide some services around how we can help. So I'm going to open up to one more quick question here before we kind of round it out here. I know only have about 5 minutes left, but what is your biggest concern about Dynamics GP, about moving from GP to something new? And let's kick that one off and see what people are thinking here. So quickly fill out your answer here, and then we'll round it out with a little bit more about our proven methodology and what's next. And all right, so coming in first place is at 67, we've got the cost and the return on investment. So that's a very valid point. You know, if you think about GP, if you've been using it forever, hopefully you're paying your annual maintenance. It is a lift, right? It is an investment in terms of the cost, and whether it's the actual software you have to buy or the implementation, or your time, you know, in your users' time. So that's a good one. And then number two, right behind it at 33%, is the data security and privacy in the cloud. And again, too, if you have reasons why you have not been on the cloud, I understand that. And one thing that we can do from that perspective is help you understand the security and the protocols that both of the publishers in Microsoft and Acumatica have put in place to ensure that your data is safe and that it's protected. And ultimately, too, in the case of Acumatica, if you were saying, hey, I can't be in a multi-tenant cloud, that's okay. There is that private option. So appreciate your responses here on the survey. We are doing all that we can from a cost perspective to help alleviate that. You know, in working with the publishers to come up with those offers. I'd love to kind of explain that to you if you want to get a little bit more detail after the session today. Now, kind of centered around that is ultimately a shift from GP to something new is a migration. And I wanted just to touch on the fact that we have a proven methodology that we've used for thousands of implementations called the Crestwood Way. And one thing that's unique here, I won't labor this slide too much, is that we educate our clients before we even move into what I call the discovery and design and the implementation phase. So, again, if you've been using GP for a while and you're introduced to something new, it's going to take some learning. And we have an LMS training environment. There are universities, whether it's through Acumatica or Microsoft, that help you get up to speed. So then when we move into that the discovery and design step in the implementation, we're speaking the same language, and that you understand either Acumatica or Business Central and some of the capabilities that they offer, so you can get more out of the product. And I jokingly say, don't implement a new system the old way. If you're going to do that, then just stay on GP, and write it out, right? But Business Central, they have a dimensional chart of accounts that's much different than what GP offers in the old segmented approach. Acumatica has something called a sub-account. So you can slice and dice, run P&Ls by product line, by department, by division in a much cleaner way than you could in Management Reporter and on Dynamics GP. So know that, yes, it's an endeavor, but Crestwood has done this thousands of times, and we build a project plan, we dedicate a project manager to ensure that you're successful and that you hit that, go live and that post go live successfully on time and on budget. So next steps. If you have your phone or a device, scan this QR code and you can get a free migration assessment. We can actually run that, and it looks at your GP environment and it detects things like customizations, ISVs, anything that might be problematic if you're going to switch. If you're concerned about the cost, running this free tool will be really important, so you can start to get your arms around the overall investment that it might take. And that, again, is where we can come in and assist you with that. And it is a really good way to kind of start your plan to moving off of GP. And I'll get involved, or somebody from the team will get involved, and we'll start to really look at kind of what it would entail to change. So this is something that we're offering to you today for attending the webinar. And then I wanted to kick it over to Simon to help you understand too what's next from a Starship perspective.
All right, well, thanks, Jason. And yeah, so for those of you kind of what's next on the Starship side, so obviously, hearing what Jason has just presented, and if you decide to move to Acumatica, Business Central 365, right, we just want to make sure you're aware of some next steps on the Starship side here, because they're important, and they will require some changes, obviously. So for our current on-prem users, right, they're using maybe your old desktop client on-prem application. Obviously, and if you're wanting to stay on-premise for any reason, we do need to have you purchase a new interface, right, to be compatible with either Acumatica or Business Central 365, and you can continue to run in that on-prem environment. However, most of our on-prem users are indeed migrating into the cloud as well with Starship. So if you do move into the cloud, we can talk to you about what that would look like from a licensing perspective, also from professional services perspective, to make sure that you're configured and working properly in the cloud. So that way you can have a true cloud-to-cloud solution in either side here. If you are using our cloud solution today, we do want to make you aware that there could be some licensing changes depending on where you're coming from, right? If you're coming from the GP side and going to Acumatica or BC, may not be so much in licensing changes, but more on professional services in itself that may need to be happening, so that way we can make sure all the mappings are configured and things like that. That might be the easier transition here, but we can help you in either way, shape or form. But please reach out to us here at the sales@vtechnologies.com address that's listed below, so that way one of my team members can reach out to you and talk about that further and what would that entail, so you can make your best decision moving here in the future. So we definitely appreciate the time, and as Jason mentioned, we'll definitely open up to any questions that have come in, and I guess turn it back to Michelle.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody, for the presentation. So I'm actually going to launch a poll to see where you're standing for your next steps for your future options for Dynamics GP. So I'm going to launch that right now for you. One thing, Jason, I wanted to ask you for BC 365 versus Acumatica, is there one that you see users tend to go to one over the other? Are there features that maybe users prefer on one versus the other by chance?
Yeah, there really are, there are. So it's very situational. So for example, if somebody said, hey, we're a distributor, but we're also doing a lot of heavy project accounting, I would say, well, Acumatica is probably a better fit there because the module within Acumatica is much more functional. It's a lot deeper. But if somebody said, hey, listen, we're a heavy Microsoft shop, we're using the M365 stack, from a sales, from a marketing perspective, all the way through to accounting, I would say, well, Business Central might have a little bit of a leg up. Now, Acumatica does have integrations with the M365 side as well, but it's just not as deep. So part of why I've included my contact information is I have worked with all three of the products that we've talked about today: GP, Acumatica, and Business Central. I've demoed BC, I've demoed Acumatica. I'm well aware of the kind of the strengths and the weaknesses. So if this is something that you're just starting to think about and you want to bounce a question or an idea off of me, I'm happy to jump in and help. So I know it's not like a small decision, and it requires a lot of good planning and whatnot, but I want to be a resource and available. But yeah, Michelle, there's a number of reasons why one would be better than the other. If you're doing field service, well, Acumatica has that out of the box, where Business Central, you're going to have to go to a third party. So anyhow, hopefully that helps a little bit. But again, take a screenshot or you'll get my information here as that recording is distributed tomorrow. Happy to help in any way.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much again, Jason. Looks like that's all we have for today. I just want to thank you again for taking the time to present this to our customer base, and we look forward to working with you guys in the future.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Simon. Look forward to it.
Awesome. Thank you. Have a good day, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.